And we're back. Welcome back to the Smart to Noise Ratio Pro Audio Podcast. This is episode 48. If you're counting, I'm your humble host, John Dayton.
Dude, chill it. Duck Dynasty's on.
All right. Sitting next to me, your humble co-host, Anthony Kuzabucky, looking for something suitable to have muted on the television while we broadcast.
Abducted?
Because I can't deal with Gwyneth Paltrow in leather pants on talk television.
I would need to leave my living room.
You can throw up Duck Dynasty, though, because that's like background noise for me, because I live among rednecks. Like, those are my neighbors.
Soccer?
I might get excited about soccer. Find something dull and just put it on there.
NHL. Here we go.
Perfect. All right. So, this week, we had a couple different things to line up and talk about. You want to lead with music or lead with gear?
Let's lead with music. I feel like
I'm for that.
Like today, well, not today, but yesterday. Today being Wednesday the 22nd, yesterday being the 21st. I'm not a huge fan of techno music at all. I really don't enjoy it, but I love me some Daft Punk. I always have. I always thought it was great. There was usually a great groove in it and everything, but they released a new album after something like 7 or 8 years of nothing. Like they did the Tron Legacy soundtrack, and that was pretty good. And it served its purpose and stuff, but they'd been working on an actual project of theirs for a while, and I think it was 5 years it took them to record it, something like that, or 3 years to record it, and they did it in 5 different studios, and it is amazing.
I do not like Daft Punk, and I find it amazing.
There's so much, like the first song, I told our buddy Brandon, I was like, dude, you need to check this out. It's like Parliament and Kool and the Gang had Techno Baby. And there's so
with
much
cool LED helmets.
Yeah, exactly. And it sounds so good, and the groove is so tight, and it's not, it's not like somebody whipped out a MacBook and loaded some Fruity Loops and some vocoders and everything.
And what surprised me about it was Anth played me a track here just on a little pair of computer speakers before we got started, and excuse me, I was surprised at first about how warm it sounded. Like, you usually don't think about techno.
Yeah, it's just
whatever it is, punk, pop,
crispy, just kind of sterile, I guess.
Yeah, that's sort of the ethos. Yeah, it's meant to be a little bit alienating. Like, that's what makes it all cool and outsidery, cider. But yeah,
it's not time yet.
All right, but the what Anth revealed to me then after was quite eye opening. So we were like 32 bars into the cut, and then he dropped this on me.
The whole thing was recorded on 2-inch tape.
Live.
Instruments, vocals, live drums. They used drum machines on two, not like drum samples, but drum machines. So someone actually had to write that in. Used real musicians. I can't remember the other guy's name, but the bass players that they have on it are just disgusting. Nathan East, that's played for Eric Clapton and ridiculous other amounts of people, and the guy that plays bass for Saturday Night Live now, who actually beat out a guy I know named Jerry Livingston, who's from Buffalo and played for Rick James and is on the verge of me just spewing obscenities about how good he is. Like, guy is unbelievably disgusting, and these guys on this album are sick. Like, everything is clean, perfect. Not, they recorded it onto Ampex 2-inch reels. You can go read the Wikipedia page on it, and they edit it in Pro Tools, which means they probably just changed the mixing a little bit. I don't know how much you can do with editing harmonic distortion of tapes and such.
You chop drums up just the same as anywhere else. If they did touch that was the thing that shocked me, was how on the drums were. So I didn't realize they had done any editing.
They might not have, like with the caliber of people that they've got. Because I have a couple guys that I know that are dead on to the click. I know Brian Moore's got a couple guys that make the click look bad. And those are just people that are local. So if you've got an ungodly amount of money, I think that they said they spent somewhere around $1 million on this album, you can find guys that can play on a click like that. No problem. And, use vintage vocoders for the vocals instead of auto-tune, all that kind of stuff. It is disgusting. Like, I don't care. One of my buddies, Nelson, who's a as a Puerto Rican kid, monster sax player. He's like, I dare you to listen to the new Daft Punk record and not dance. And I had to say back to him, it's like, well, I don't know what you call it when white people do what they do when they hear music that they like, because it's not really dancing. I wouldn't call it that, but
or a shuffle and
a
tweak.
I did that. Me and John were both kind of.
It makes you move.
Yeah, just shifting a bit in the kitchen. We're like, there's not enough time for this. We got a show to do.
And it's like when you get a little too much steak sauce and it gets you like right under the jaw, makes your head go a little like pull back a little bit. Yeah, it's good like that. And then you take another bite with too much sauce on. It's good stuff.
And you have to keep doing it. And I've listened to some other stuff just because I've been mixing a lot and recording some guitars and bass and editing and stuff. But in my free time, I've been listening to this and I have not regretted a second of it. My wife, who is not a huge techno fan, doesn't really like Daft Punk a lot, like, likes the singles and stuff. They're Around the World is good, and Harder, Faster, Better, Stronger is good, but she's listening, she's like, I can listen to this. I can listen to this all the time. And there's, a lot of stuff, read the Wikipedia page on it, a bunch of stuff about how, the 70s and 80s were their biggest frame of influence, and they wanted to bring music back to the music that they're doing. I think the first track name is "Give Life Back to Music," which I thought was kind of ironic and insightful towards the whole album. And just
that's pretty cool though. When a genre of music that stemmed from like wanting to create something totally outside, use machines to create something that's sort of alienating to most people,
right,
and only really interesting to the people that really like it. And now that's come sort of full circle to where that's gotten sort of out of control. So what do you do next? You make an analog techno record.
I feel like it's a lot of stuff that Trent Reznor said before, that he doesn't use Pro Tools or computers as a crutch or anything that he couldn't do himself. He uses it as a creative tool to make what he's already doing bigger and better. Not only using that because that's easier and you can just, spit at a machine and have it make you a platinum record type thing.
Yeah. What I got from that was, it was making what he does bigger and better, but also to have tools that do things that no other tool does.
Right. There aren't analog equivalents to some stuff, but.
Yep. Speaking of analog equivalents, let's talk about digital equivalents. I'm about every 6 months getting a large format digital console. It goes back on the table at the church where I work. Last Tuesday, I went into work. It was back on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Today, went into work. It was off the table. But I already had an appointment to go pay a visit to a demo of our friend Carl got me in on a demo of a DiGiCo SD-9, which my two top picks were a Soundcraft VI4 and a DiGiCo. It's getting pretty late. DiGiCo SD-8. So local college had an SD-9 in, and they had it for about a week. And the head guy was there, and his number one. So number one had spent about a week in there, just hours at a time, digging in, sort of so that he'd be able to continue doing demos, because they're thinking about buying one. But at any rate, we got a very clear, concise, well thought out demo from a guy who's actually a sound guy in a multi-purpose venue, actually a performing arts center. He's got
your microphones are covering sriracha.
Got all sorts of different rooms. Did I splash a little on there?
Oh yeah, I just picked off sriracha. Sorry.
No,
it's okay. I'm good.
Okay. Switch mics. I can just lick it off while you're talking. I can have a little taste. Hot talk. So at any rate, I've been looking for something with a little more real estate, just because the digital consoles that I have used are either like little baby ones like the Presonus or great big ones, like the Soundcraft SIs and VIs and some of the larger Yamaha ones. So anyway, little frame size, only 24 faders on it, and it's limited on I/O to only 48 ins, 16 buses out, plus some matrix outs. But it has this little bit of DiGiCo trickery where the channels are to be thought of not as physical inputs, but as channels of DSP processing. So any input or output can be mono or stereo. So you could have 48 stereo inputs on this thing as long as you get enough I/O plugged into it. You can do that. And like on a Soundcraft, if you have 16 outs, that limits you to 8 stereo IEMs you can do before you have to buy more IO. So anyway, that's a super cool feature. And the kid giving the demo, I say kid, I mean he was not like college student age. He'd been working in the industry a while. But anyway,
we called them super seniors.
That's what I was. Compressed 4 years of college into 5. Doggone it, I lost my place. Well, anyway, his take on it was they picked all the best features of all digital consoles and crammed them into one box. And then, DiGiCo's got 6 or 7 different main models, and then there's theater versions of some of the consoles and broadcast versions of some of the consoles that do different tricks to better facilitate those uses. So it just has a ton of cool stuff. Like you're not locked into using the faders any particular way. So in addition to like any DiGiCo having the mono or stereo trick on all the ins and outs, it seems like on most of them you can configure, this one had 2 trays of 12 faders each. You can have it be one big page of 24 inputs and then have another big page of 24 inputs under that and a big page of outputs and a big page of effects and returns and whatever. Or the way he had it configured was the 12 left ones was 4 layers of input faders and the right side was 4 layers of auxes, bus mixes, outs, and groups and DCAs
and you can control. Obviously, you can write all that in what you want each side.
Fully programmable, and each there's 4 selector buttons down the side of each tray with little scribble strips on them, so you can color code them, write in whatever you need to have. What are you laughing at?
There's over at California Road, Josh has this mental battle every time I'm in with him. Fader, he's got an Avid D command or Icon D command, whatever it is. I don't know. When it was new, it cost $80,000. That's all I know. It's made of joysticks and Mike and Ike's.
Yeah, it is.
And
it has a fantastic talkback section
when it works. It's great. I still don't know how to work that thing, and I've said some awful things to performers recently. But anyways, there's one fader because he pages through and it's convenient. You hear old analog guys talk about, I keep my drums on this section of the bus, all that stuff. And he likes mixing on, with his right hand to the center of the master control section, that bay of 8 faders. And like fader 6, he uses so much that it doesn't always take. Like he'll go like page through, you see all the faders jump, all the controls blink and all this stuff, and scroll through till he's content to where everything he wants to touch is at, and then he goes to touch it with his ring finger or his middle finger because that's what he'll drive with, and every time he'll move it to go and write something, snap, pop back to 0 every time. I've been working with him for like 4 weeks now, and every single time, son of a So I've gotten the privilege of mixing with my pinky a couple times because it doesn't get quite there before it snaps back.
You nudge all the channels down one.
Yeah,
girl, you so nudgeable.
You're so nudgeable.
All right, so moving on. Speaking of faders, another cool trick that the DiGiCo does: graphic EQs on digital desks seem to be a big issue with a lot of people. Even though I don't touch them a lot, but when you do have to touch them, it'd be nice if it was easy. So. Giant screen on this thing, truly massive touchscreen, and we'll get to that later. Like that's just everything you could ever want or need out of a touchscreen. But so you hit the GEQ section after and patching them in is real easy, and you can do things like you can insert them as inserts, or just like in the real world, you can patch straight through them to the output. Thought that was cool because Carl prefers going straight through them. I prefer them on inserts, so you got that option
for the EQ section.
Yeah, so you pull up the graphic EQ window and you can see a small representation of every graph in the box, and then the one that you're working on, you touch the one you want and it jumps to the front and it's big. And highlighted on that are because there's only 24 faders, it'll show you which 24 faders are active. The scribble strips all have the frequencies in them. It's got a center detent on it. So if you want to return a band to 0, and it's solid. I mean, it's not
just
like
smack and go.
I mean, it stops. Like you gotta let go and start it up again if you pause at center. And there's a row of buttons over the faders that sometimes they're solo buttons, sometimes they're select buttons. In graphic EQ mode, they're AB buttons. So if you're checking this and that, you can turn a frequency off, and then turn it back on again. Click of a button.
That's pretty nice.
Pretty nice.
Yeah.
Then let's get into the window. On this one, you're looking at one or the other banks of 12, and there's a big red button on either side of the fader trays that determines which bank is being pictured in the main window. And I think you can you can plug in an external monitor, so I think you can just see everything all the time. I know it'll definitely mirror the screen in the desk, and I think additionally you might be able to split it out so like you don't have to page back and forth, but it wouldn't be touch, so
right.
You would still want those selectors to flip flop, I guess. So, if you want to look at the left bank, you just hit the left bank button, right bank button, everything jumps instantly. The lack of lag on anything on this thing, the sheer horsepower in this thing for DSP, like faders snap instantly, screen reacts instantly, you touch the screen. I mean, it's like
I've had
like
nightmares.
It can see you coming.
I've had nightmares about stuff like that where it just snaps into place and then just the actual piece that you put your finger on flies off into the crowd somewhere. You're like, oh, damn it.
They seem like they're pretty well attached. Maybe I'll get a little silly putty in there.
I was just going to say, yeah, put some epoxy in those suckers. Because the first day I get that, it's going to be flying all over the place.
Some little set screws, aftermarket. Yep. I got aftermarket faders, these big knurled chrome knobs with set screws on each side.
Just like a Telecaster.
Right. Yeah. So looking in, you got your channel strips there, or your output strips. There's dedicated buttons on the side, so you can pull up master sections of, the head amp, the parametric EQ, which is super slick. 4-band fully parametric plus high and low shelf. 2 varieties of EQ, so you can have classic or surgical, classical or precision, I think.
How do the Q factors work on the parametric? Is there like a dial for it? Like, what's the actual? Okay.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, there's a dedicated set of knobs for the EQ sections, and there's a parametric EQ on every input and output.
Okay.
And the knobs they have a little bit less drag than I would like. Like they have a pretty light feel, although not as light as, well, the Soundcrafts.
Really?
Soundcraft knobs feel light and a little cheap to me. I feel like kind of like how you felt about the knobs on the Avalon. They're like, yeah, they look like chrome, but that's just plastic.
That was Joey. Like I didn't notice it until after he said it. I was like, ah, damn it. Man, like every time I meet Joey, I hate whatever piece of gear I've gotten more. Every time we hang out, we're like, yeah, I like that, but this could be better. Like, damn it, man, come on, you got a $300 preamp, just give me something.
Right. So anyway, you tap the EQ section of the channel you want, and it pops up. You get a nice big vertical window with the display and all the values written out there, and then you reach over and you got your EQ knobs there. Well, if you hit close, they took a cue from Yamaha to where if you decide you want to touch that EQ again, you just reach back for the knobs, and whatever channel was last selected, that'll pop right up. So like you don't have to select it and then grab the knobs again if you got a channel you're working on pretty consistently. And you can actually do that for everything, like whatever fader you touch, it'll pop up.
Okay.
Which can be a bit of a cluster if you happen to grab a lot of faders at once. So most guys leave that off, I'm told. And then for, the comp and the gate section, there's a horizontal row of knobs under the screen and a button under each one. And those are multifunctional, but those make it super quick to touch up the comp and the gate. They had a nice feel. Like they felt light, but not cheap. You know what I mean? Not wiggly, but real smooth, real light, and, no lag. Like watching parameters change on the screen, it just felt nice and tight. And then AUXes, having to do monitors from front of house. That I had kind of explained my situation, and that folks that listen to the podcast know I'm mixing a buttload of monitor mixes from front of house on a Midas Legend 3000, which they have there, so they were all familiar with. And he's like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna like this." So you can do mixes on the faders, and that's a one button thing to do. You
mix. Right. So
you have your master section open on the right hand side of the desk. You tap the one you want, boom, you're mixing on the faders. Tap the next one, boom, you're mixing on the faders. If you're doing a traditional sound check where you're like, okay, play some keyboard, and everybody raises their hands that wants keyboards. You don't want to have to page through every single mix on stage for every single input, especially if you got close to 50 inputs. So this lets you, on that row of knobs under the screen, if you're working on the piano channel, you tap the piano channel, tap the aux section, and you've got every aux there available on a knob.
On knobs, not faders. Can you work it into working on faders?
I wouldn't be surprised if you could. I didn't ask that though, because I just thought it's so that, like, it's right under the screen. Like,
Right.
you can keep half an eyeball on it if you need to actually
And
read.
you can just page between.
Yeah. Just to the right of that. So, like, if you started on AUX 1, by the time you get down to AUX 8, your hand is right next to the second page button.
Okay, so it'll flip over to 9 through 16.
Yeah. So that's super easy. And setting the console up, out of the box, it won't pass audio. So if you show up and you don't have a show file in there, you got a little bit of work to do. But assigning stuff to inputs and outputs is pretty easy. It's slightly more involved than you would think, because it's not just like, okay, this mic pre to this channel. You also have to kind of patch all the way through in some instances,
Like
because you can just because you can also route internally.
Okay.
So, like, if you want, a channel to come in, I'm having trouble thinking of a good example, but, like, you can, in addition to all the physical I/O, you can also route internal inserts to effects, or, you can send things from channels directly to matrices without having to go through groups and stuff. Yeah. So you can do all that setting up, and because of that, it means you have to route inputs and sort of throughputs as you're setting up channels.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not doing anything nuts, you just tell it how many channels you're working on, and it'll just populate it for you.
That's kind of nice. What I'd be interested to see is, and I'm sure it just kind of does it, but sending right through mixes and then not having to worry about after you send through mixes, like it's just a direct IO to, instead of
doing a traditional setup is really easy. You have to take it into account. Like, you have to tell it, like, no, just do the normal.
Okay.
And then, it kind of makes you do that.
It doesn't necessarily have to go through the EQ or the aux sends to get to the effect send or anything like that.
Correct. Right. Like, if you wanted to use one of the internal processors as an insert effect on one channel, you could do that.
Okay. So, like, if you just want to send reverb on the vocals to the vocal aux instead of all the other auxes, that's feasible? It might take a little bit of work, or is that...
Probably. We didn't spend a whole lot of time on that. He was just like...
I'm going to ask all the dick questions. Sorry, man.
I told you when I sat down, I had my fill of dicks today, so you're treading on thin ice.
Dickheads, check. Got it.
Got him. I got the hat trick now. Thanks.
We're 2 out of 3 on the list.
And no, Brian, you weren't one of them. Never will be.
Yeah.
But so anyway, we didn't spend a ton of time on that. Just like, if you're doing a straight up in and out 1-to-1 configuration, you just type in how many channels you're working on, boom, populates it. Now, some other cool tricks. So you got your buses, so you are limited on as to how many buses you have, but your matrices are independent of that. So media mixes and things like that. If you burn up a lot of your I/O for in-ears, you still have a lot of I/O left over for recording mixes, lobby, stage fill, side fill, balcony fill.
Is it like a traditional matrix where it's like 1 through, like,
it's like a traditional matrix, except that you can send anything to it. So it's sort of like the screwed up matrices on your Yamaha, where like you throw them in variable mode.
They're screwed up,
and you can use them like an AUX. But
yeah, that's what you're supposed to use them
you can internally, you can patch anything to a matrix.
That's cool. You're not limited to the but like on mine, you're limited to mix 1 through 16. But if you wanted to put something else into something, you could take whatever else is in mix 16 out of one matrix and put something else.
Well, so like if you say,
it works.
Right, like let's say you want to send a mix of what's going on, like roughly in your house, out to the lobby, but you don't need the music quite as loud, you need the speaking a little louder. You set that up on your matrix like you normally would, but then let's say you need a microphone out in the lobby for paging. You get that into your I/O somehow, and that can also just go straight to that matrix and nowhere else. But it doesn't
shoot to front of house.
Right, and you don't have to burn a group to do it. Like,
how much do those cost?
The SD-824, actually the SD-9 that we looked at is about $30K, depending on what you get for I/O. I forget what the base package is.
I wonder if we got any rich people that are ready to kick it.
What else?
I'm going to hear about that.
Here's another cool trick. You know how on a digital console you can make a pair of 2 mono channels to have them act as stereo channels? Since this one will turn any channel into a stereo channel, that's kind of a built-in trick already, but you can extend that out. So, like, let's say you have 5 floor mics across the front of your stage. You can gang. It's called ganging, and it's a little bit different. You can gang those together so that if you grab any one of those 5 faders, it moves them all.
Okay.
And then all of your other moves follow too. So if you EQ one of them, it EQs them all. do an effects send, it sends them all.
So it's like essentially grouping and like
it's like grouping,
group busing in Pro Tools or whatever.
Right.
Okay.
But if you need to then break one out and EQ one differently or something like that, like you can safe off one area of it or something like that.
It sounds like Pro Tools to me.
It is. So it's basically a way to get like a free extra group or DCA.
Okay.
Like all the processing will stay the same across it. It's like if you don't want to burn a group for your front mics, it's like another sneaky way to have extra groups on there. And the other thing is they don't have to all even be on the same page. Like they don't have to be adjacent. So like if you wanted,
just internally soft patch together.
Yeah, you pick which one's the master, and then you can go through all your pages and assign any other ones to it. So you could group crazy stuff to it. Like it wouldn't have to be like 5 similar inputs. Like if you had,
I feel like that would solve so many problems with my grouping issues.
Yeah,
on
your
Sunday
orchestra
mornings.
could all, yeah.
No, we don't mic them.
Oh.
It's like background vocals. You don't really need to mic them. You just need to record them before and throw some nice things on so they sound like real singers. And
you play recordings then, or?
No, I've thought it's too open of a format to be able to get away with that.
And Siri's not quite good enough yet.
They do make an external auto-tune box though. It's only like $400, and
I get asked about that all the time.
I mean, if it wasn't one of those things that would come at a board meeting, like, why do you need this? Like, if you heard, are you there on Sunday mornings? You know why. That's why.
Yep.
It was like, well, don't you just have an off button? Like, yes.
Yeah, but then you get yelled at for not being able to hear the singers. Isn't that a double-edged sword?
It's so biblical.
That makes you want to divide them in half and let the person that cares about them most make the decision. Like, would you want to hear them or do you not want to hear them? Because both of those things are true. I understand, in theory, you want to hear them.
But do you want to hear them better?
No. I would actually like less clarity and definition. So, all right. Last things last. We got to effects. We had just been listening to some music on his phone. Sounded great. It was a good sounding room. It was a nice concert hall. Nice system in it. But plugged in a vocal mic. Just garden variety. It was like Beta 58. Threw one of the reverbs on it. Just straight out of the box. No high pass, low pass. Didn't change the times or anything like that. Just, reverb number 1 out of the box.
Mm-hmm.
What's his...
That was one of the things I was wondering, because
I died a little.
With the Soundcraft, you've got all the name brand. You got BSS Dynamics, you've got Lexicon reverbs, which, don't get me wrong, Lexicon reverbs are
today's.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome. I don't know if you'd find. I haven't found anybody that complains about a Lexicon reverb. A few of the best recording houses in the area all use external or internal Lexicon processing for some of the reverbs, along with Altiverb and whatever other stuff they've got. But Lexicon pretty much takes the cake. If it didn't also take all the DSP cake too.
Yeah.
that was one of the things I was wondering. Like, is it? Yeah, it sounds good, but if there's somebody else that's got something that's just as good as, are you going to be buying a console based on the fact that you've got name brand BSS Dynamics and Lexicon Verb and effects and such?
I don't know. I don't care what these are named. It was the most lush, beautiful reverb I have heard out of any box or software or device pretty much ever.
Did you get into the dynamics at all?
We assigned a compressor to something. Like we didn't do a ton of work with it. Judging from how everything else sounded on this thing, I imagine they're cracking good. Nice. So then the very last thing he did, and then I promise I'll stop talking about this for people who aren't interested in DiGiCos.
If you weren't before.
Yeah, this one's going out to my Scottish friend who I was talking with on Reddit about. He was mentioning that he knew a dealer close by. Where are you? And I was in Buffalo, New York. Oh, I'm in Scotland. All right, can't help. But it was great to talk to my Scottish brethren about these, because he was super excited about them, and now so am I. So the last thing we did was in the bin of effects, there's a bin called specials, which there's like reverbs, specials, choruses. So I'm wondering what's in specials. Like, is he going to get
you only the green M&Ms? That's what it does.
Oh, it gives you a lot more than that. gives you the high hard one is what it does. So he clicks on it. He's like, yeah, you got to hear this. This is what makes this. So he cranks up the tunes, pops this plug-in in on the output bus,
And it star fades the entire stage.
It star fades your life. And Carl described it as being like a sonic maximizer, except good. Except ultimately good.
Good is better than anything I've heard.
It turned the best sounding digital console that I've heard into a damn good sounding analog console.
Really?
Like, sounded better than my Midas. Unreal.
I'm just
unreal.
Not
like
having issues, having lust issues, I guess, is what I'm having. I'm gonna need to start mixing Saturdays a little bit more at your place.
Oh, if it happens, yeah. I mean,
Are you gonna let off?
I'm just gonna provide sleeping bags for people that want to come camp out near it.
Volunteers for weeks.
Well, that's another nice thing is I feel like, you know, I don't know, I've got a fair amount of experience. I feel like I can walk up to just about anything and mix, except that you can't on a lot of things. Like
newer stuff is.
I'm not scared of many analog desks, but you know, I walked up to the baby Soundcraft, the little SI Expression, and I'm like, where's the everything? Like, okay, it's real easy to get to the graphic EQs, but I don't want to get to those all the time. Like, where's the stuff?
Yeah.
Walked up to this thing. I was like, you know, we were waiting for the other rep to show up. I'm like, oh, you mind if I poke for a minute before he shows up? I spent not quite 4 minutes touching stuff, and you know, I couldn't do a lot of the deeper functions without messing with it a little more. But if that board plopped down in my space at 4 o'clock, I could run a rehearsal at 5 for a dozen musicians, no problem. And for that reason, I feel like I could simplify that enough to leave the intern, leave a less experienced engineer, a volunteer there. You know, once things are set up, and I'm sorry, I'm going to keep remembering cool things all night. On a lot of shows, if you want to change configurations, now like you can do things with snapshots like change effects patches and stuff, but like if you want to straight up change I/O, you can do that in a queue. Whereas on another desk, you'd have to load a new show file in the middle of your show with whatever.
Takes a minute.
Yeah, well, and it'll sometimes disconnect audio for like all audio for a bit while it sorts itself out. This one, he hit a button and the faders jumped. He's like, as fast as those moved, I'm in a new configuration. And then he clicked back. Just like, yeah. And you didn't hear anything. Like we had a bunch of channels open. I didn't hear a thing. It's got a cool.
It's like the ESP on your Walkman. It just
knows.
It just lets it go. Drop the thing down a flight of stairs and still pick up on the middle of the Crazy Train solo.
Everything about this thing, it's like it can see you coming. Like it knows engineers, it knows what you want, and it's like by the time you touch it, it's already doing it. Can't say enough good about it.
That's me and John talked about it a little bit before. Like it's kind of it's definitely a good thing, but it's almost a little bit discouraging to guys like John and Carl, who for a longer time, but me more recently have been Soundcraft guys. Like we like the products, we know the products, we know how they work and stuff. And you got not necessarily a newcomer to the game, but someone that's been basically the company's name is DiGiCo.
They did not have a great rep
digital
coming out, and it's really only in the last year or so that they've started to become really truly rider friendly.
And stuff like people like John, Carl, and me. Like I haven't touched one yet, but at least John and Carl saying, "Yeah, I take that over Soundcraft." Like it hurts a little bit inside.
Carl said it walking out of the place. He's like, "Well, here's about the two biggest Soundcraft fanboys around, and we're ready to walk away from them as a brand." Like,
yeah.
I was seriously considering, like, I have a Mackie tattoo that I got years ago when I got started, and I'm not ashamed of that. It was a good buy for the size sound that I was doing at the time. It was a mile marker in my life, and I was thinking, I'll get a Soundcraft tattoo to go next to it to show the evolution. Like, nope, jumping straight over that and getting a DiGiCo tattoo.
What's that, son? You got a Pinto and then a Rolls Royce.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not ashamed of it at all. It's just it's a weird. I don't know. It's like.
Wait till you hear it. It's the only weird thing you're going to feel is that slight stirring in your loins that makes you wonder if you could possibly make a baby with this thing.
Stand 9 inches away.
Because you're going to want to. Yeah, leave a respectful distance.
But yeah, it's almost on there have been a weird night of milestones. Like John also saying that he didn't quite mind Daft Punk tonight. Like
I know.
He got saved or something. I don't know.
Something in the air.
Yeah, it's just a little bit strange. It's not bad at all. It's just not expected.
Yeah, really. I mean, if it's apples to apples, I'm gonna pick the Soundcraft.
Right.
Pre's being equal, work service being roughly equal, I'm gonna pick the Soundcraft. Like, even if it's a little more expensive.
But it's not apples to apples anymore.
Nope. Not even close. It makes the VIs look like last year's, I don't know what.
And those were the cake for a while.
Yeah, I mean, unless you can afford a Midas, to my thinking, it would be pretty hard to do better. Like the Yamahas are maybe a little bit easier to use. Like the VIs didn't really take off in music. Like they're really well suited for churches. They're super easy to use, but for some reason they never took off as touring consoles or other type of venue consoles.
Was it Seb or was it the guy from Indigo? I was specking out renting a stage and I needed a live desk. It's like, hey, you wanna let me? I'll drive it. Can I use a VI? No. We'll give you a Midas. And like usually that's like, sure, great. Yeah, I'll take them. No, damn it. I want the VI.
And now sight unseen, you want the DiGiCo.
I think, I don't know.
They make some bitty ones. Like if I'm ever ready for
we should spec that out for Batavia.
it would definitely blow the budget.
I think we've done that.
Oh, actually, on the digital console front, I didn't spring this on you in advance, but I was over at Guitar Center trading in a deathly old analog monitor console for a couple of mics, and while I was waiting for the guy to do the transaction, he had a Soundcraft SI Expression right over top a Behringer X32, like on the same stand in the back.
Yeah.
So I sidle up to that Soundcraft, and this was a couple of days before I had my DiGiCo revelation. But I'm like, hey, how you doing? Let's see if we can get into it. First thing I noticed about it, no scribble strips. I sort of, in looking at all the propaganda, I hadn't noticed that about it before. It doesn't have scribble strips on it. And I feel like if I'm buying a digital console, I should not have to put tape on it to know where I'm at.
Especially if you're going to be paging through.
Yeah. And the screen seemed really small. I will give it, the fat channel is nicey nice. That was responsive, tactile. It was nice. And then I had to kneel down to get to it, but the Behringer right under it, I hate to say it, but it was speaking to me. If I had to put that console in front of church operators, the EQ is a little more cryptic. Like there's only 3 EQ knobs, so you have to pick whether you're on the highs, high mids, low mids, or lows. But that's about the only gripe I have with it.
So do we need to start redesigning a little bit?
We need to requote that job, but it's going to save them money and make it easier on their operators and easier for us to train them. And again, it was another case of I walk up to one, I'm like, well, shit, where's the everything? Like, how do I name a channel? How do I get to, like, okay, there's the graphic EQ, super.
With that sweet seafoam green from the 90s that didn't speak to you at all.
So then, but you mean the color of the scroll strips? Or?
The color of the console.
Yeah. The chrome faders I could have done without, but I got Krylon. I can pop those puppies off. I'll do it, too.
And then set screw them back in so they don't off.
But, yeah, I mean, honestly, the Behringer felt as well built as the Soundcraft did. Like the faders felt solid, the knobs felt solid.
It's because it's a Midas at heart.
It is. Actually, we were talking about it at the demo. Somebody had one of those. Somebody walked up to him and he was like, "Man, it sounds pretty good. What do you got there?" And he had an X32 with a big piece of gaff tape over Behringer, but left part of the Midas hanging out from under that. And he's like, "Hey, I got a Behringer. What do you got? I got a Behringer." But you know what? We're hearing from all quarters that they're surprisingly well made and that they sound good. And if I have to put one in front of volunteers, I'm going to spec one of those before I spec a Soundcraft. So I feel like I ought to have to do some sort of penance. Like,
since how long ago did Harman buy them out?
I forget.
Was it before or after the Series 2?
After.
About the same time?
I'm trying to remember because they discontinued it shortly after I bought it in 06. But
I feel like Harman bought them after, or bought a conglomerate of them after, because that's when they started doing all the, hey, you can do everything from your drive rack. I'm like, well, drive rack, it's a drive rack. It's got mute buttons for the outputs and stuff. There's a power switch if you really screw something up, but so many. I'm just gonna stay in the studio. I feel like that's just easier to handle right now than
I know. It's been some harsh awakenings for a guy.
I haven't kept up with any live stuff at all.
And this on top of that, I'm selling my own Soundcraft, and I was like, all right, screw it, I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to hang my head and buy a Behringer. And then the SI Expression came out, and I was like, yes, I don't have to buy a Behringer, I can trade my Soundcraft for another Soundcraft. And then I met one, and I'm not super psyched, and also my $8,000 mid-sized console is now worth about $1,000.
Yeah.
Actually, probably more than that because it's really low mileage, no smoking. Actually, kids, if you're interested in a 40
sell it
channel
in pounds,
huh?
You sell it for £1,000.
Hey, yeah, that would work out. So anyway, I'm actually going to try and do another trade with that at Guitar Center because nobody wants the thing. Like, it's the time for large format analog consoles is basically over. Like, the few of the Midas guys are hanging on, and there's less of them all the time. There's going to be one less by the end of summer if I have anything to say about it.
Well, there'll always be Roman.
Yeah,
there will
Roman
always.
said there'll always be a couple
as long
of guys.
as they keep making whiskey and cigarettes, there will always be Roman.
Right, but you know the sad thing, like swapping out a Soundcraft SI for my Midas, the difference was noticeable. Even using the same, like that one didn't have a digital snake on it. Like I plugged it right into my copper, and the difference was amazing right out of the box.
I've had, not to totally change gears, but had that experience in the studio too. Like plugging in just a couple nicer pre's makes, sweet Jesus, the world of difference. Like just recording through some, not homemade, but kit made Neve pre's and 1176s that we will, as I despairingly look at the Hammond parts,
on your
my coffee table, we will build the Neve pre's or API pre's and then the 1176s too. But it just, sweet Jesus, the difference. Just, I mean, technically cost less money actually than the pre's that I have, even per channel, and just a noticeable difference in sound quality makes it. And if you can do that across your whole mix, good God. It's like going from mixing through an old, PM 4K in a studio to an API or an Eve or even an SSL. Just sounds better.
Show enough does.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, so did we
is
cover...
Is that a segue into gear depreciation, maybe?
Yeah, with my own woes about my Soundcraft. Yeah, trying to sell off analog mixers right now is just a son of a bitch. And that got me to thinking about depreciation overall. Like, in the course of, the last 20 years of my life, I had built up nearly $100,000 worth of live sound equipment, and I'll consider myself quite lucky if I get 20,000 out of it. It'll probably be more like 12 or 15 when all is said and done. Because after it reaches a certain point, like a decade is really about the full life cycle of something. Like, unless you happen onto something that's going to turn out to someday
a classic,
become vintage and cool. But who has 30 years to wait around to find out about that? Like, I might be able to recoup my investment on my Soundcraft if it turns out to be like the 400Bs from the early 70s, but I doubt it.
Yeah, but at the same time, you've got to, like, it's got to be good enough to keep going with. There can't be something that comes out and is exponentially better. Like, that's the way it's worked with recording, like, microphones and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and show me, I know there are stuff, there are things, but, versus a vintage U87 Neumann mic, people haven't stopped using them because there's something better. They've kept using them because they're awesome and they sound good on most everything. And even though they make new ones, they're still not as good as the old ones. So it's
actually, it was almost 7 years ago when I bought this console, and it only has about 400 hours on it. I didn't do a ton of gigs with it. It paid for itself,
right?
Which paid for itself 2 or maybe almost 3 times over, despite not using it a ton. I got a ton of gigs that I wouldn't have gotten had I not had a 40-channel desk. But the thing that happened to me was there was a real paradigm shift. Like, digital finally made it down to the small fries, and that's it. It was over. Like, if that hadn't happened, if Presonus hadn't started sniffing around down at the bar band level,
those bastards.
Well, thank God they did, because look at what's coming out now. Everybody and their cousin makes a small format digital mixer.
Right.
Definitely find something that's up your alley. If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be in such bad shape. But I still, the first year, it's like a car. You buy a $30,000 automobile. After the first year, it's only worth 21,000.
It's when I used to work in cars, they used to say all the time. I work for a large dealership around here, and you drive it off the lot and you lose a third.
That's fairly accurate too. And you look around at gently used audio equipment, you're looking at least 20%, probably more like 25-30% off, which is the reason we tell you, if you're looking for mics, get online and buy them, because there's a good chance it's got 80% of the life in it for
if not more. Like
less than money. Yeah,
they're just. I mean, like you really like you've got to do something awful and fierce to a 57 or a 421 to kill that sucker.
For dynamic mics and for live mics, it's a little bit different. I mean, studio mics are usually pretty well treated, although those are a little more delicate, so you got to be a little more careful buying condenser studio mics.
And those don't lose, like the good ones don't lose as much value.
Right. Like if I'm buying dynamic, like Shure Dynamics on eBay, as long as I can see in the picture that it's not mashed completely flat, I know it's going to work. Buy it.
If I could still plug an XLR into that sucker, it's fine.
Yep.
Maybe the smashed caps will give it a tighter configuration.
It does change the pattern slightly. You get a little more air, surprisingly, up top. But you need to be thinking about this, because after that first year, that first minute, actually, chop a third of whatever you paid for it. A third of that is gone. You'll never recoup it. So from there on out, you need to be thinking, all right, am I going to just use this until it's used up, like I did with my cabinets and my amps and a lot of the other stuff I had? Or am I going to want to sell this and trade up to something bigger, or maybe just something different after a few years? Because you need to catch it at the point where somebody will still give you some money.
Any money.
After 10 years, you're looking at 10 to 20% at most of the value.
Yep.
It's just even if there's not a major paradigm shift, like with recorders, like you couldn't give away a mini disc based recorder these days.
I've tried.
Yeah,
I've got 4.
It can't be done. Like the bum shuffling by, I was like, what am I going to do with this? No, give me $4 for that at the pawn shop. You cannot give them away.
I still have 4, though, if anybody listening wants.
What? I always wanted one for a pet. Maybe I'll come. Like a little Tamagotchi.
You feed it cassette tapes for.
So
cut up in little pieces.
Anyway, yeah, I wrote a post on that on the blog this week. That'll be up there by the time this goes to air. But that's something you need to seriously think about. Is what is my stuff worth right now? You know, kind of mentally go through your rig and your stock. And it's different if you're a studio guy. But if you're a small studio guy that is going to want to be upgrading to be a little bigger or a lot bigger, you got to figure that if you're going to need to sell stuff to level up, do not count on it.
And that kind of, like John said a bunch of times, buy your second one first. And that doesn't necessarily mean buy a double of things. It means if you got to save up for another month to buy something that's going to be a little bit better and last you a little bit longer, if you don't necessarily need it right now.
That's where the other article I wrote about a month and a half ago is called "The Poor Man Pays Twice."
Yeah.
And yeah, like if what you really need is a $1,200 mixer, save up and buy a $1,200 mixer. Don't buy an $800 mixer and then have to try and sell that and then buy a $1,200 mixer, because
you're going to end up spending $2,000 at the end of it.
Right. And unless you really have a use for that second mixer. Well, that's actually Ica posted right away. He had a little Persona 16 that he bought, and then he upgraded to an
X32.
He bought an X32. He was actually one of our first friends that actually got their hands on one. So now he's got this Presonus that he can't get anything for. Like, it's not at all worth it to sell.
Can't even pull a transformer out of that sucker. Is there? Probably not.
No, it's a power transformer. Well, no, it's a switch mode power supply.
Yeah. So
yeah.
We still that thing for Mike and Ike's. They're everywhere.
You couldn't even get one good hit of smack for that thing on the streets.
Ooh, the Phillies won.
Hey, how about that? So, yeah. So now he's got a relatively nice compact digital mixer for backup or to loan to his friends or to make an interesting conversation piece on the coffee table. But
go office space on.
But there it sits. Like, he's not, and I think he mentioned in his post or in his comment that, he wished he had moved on it sooner, because you never know. Like, you can watch the trends all you want. You never know what's going to catch on. Like, even if you're...
I'm trying to remember if I feel like he bought the Presonus before the X32 came, like a decent amount of time before the X32 came out. So he needed something.
Oh, yeah, a long time, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, back when Presonus was it.
Okay, all right.
So he bought it when it was the thing to get if you were going to have a small format digital console. Like, it was the one, well, unless you're going to get like an 01V. Listen, let us...
I mean, if
moving on. Thank you.
Yeah, but that's essentially the progression of especially live audio gear. Like, you've got something that it's always bugged me. Like, me and John had a conversation about all the old CD Walkmans and stuff. You went out and bought the greatest newest thing, 45 seconds of electronic skip protection, and then the next week you found one at the dollar store for 10 seconds of ESP, but you could throw that sucker down a street. It was still, somebody gave me like a $10 Walkman once for a birthday present. Somebody else gave me a, $100 Sony one, and the Sony one crapped. It just didn't, like, you couldn't sneeze the wrong way and have it still work. With this Craig CD player, just, I had to close it with duct tape. Like, there were so many things broken on that, but it still worked every time. But, you go after sometimes the newer, better thing that has just come out without, if that's what you got to do to get by and keep working and stuff, that's great. But, if you
try not to do things out of desperation,
right? Yeah, if you've got the ability and got the time to wait out for it a little bit, and what you got is working, then give it a little bit. Don't buy it the first day it comes out. Sweet Jesus, if I would have done that with Pro Tools, I've been screwed.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's gonna be a never-ending chain in your life of upgrades, but you gotta try and be as smart about it as you can. Buy what's gonna work for you. Don't buy what everybody else is buying. I'm not ready to jump on anybody's bandwagon until I see the proof. Heard a lot of good reviews about the Behringer. Didn't want to get into one until I actually got my hands on one. So now I did. That's confirmed.
How long were we talking smack about pretty much everything other than the VI stuff for a
pretty
large
long
format?
Time. Pretty long, 6-7 years.
Yeah, since it came out. Essentially,
well, the Midas stuff you can't shake a stick at, but you also can't have one unless you have $200,000.
Somebody's got $200,000. You just need to take that. That's all.
Yeah. But yeah, and the VIs were sort of like, don't get angry when I say this. Anth, stay put. Try not to come right out of your seat. The VI, it was sort of like the Presonus. It was the first one that really made sense in a given spot. And like all the Yamaha guys are going to come out and smack me like, no.
PM1D.
You can't look at a PM1D. It just doesn't hold a candle. Like the Soundcraft VI was the first digital mixer, and it still is. Like if I'm trying to figure out if somebody's going to be able to handle digital mixing, I'll say like, all right, download the offline software for a VI. Call me when it makes sense. The phone never rings more than half an hour later, and that includes like navigating, downloading, and installing time. So like it really only takes even novices about 12 minutes to get their heads wrapped around that. That's a pretty well designed console, and they sound good.
The PM1D is a pain in the ass, man.
Yeah,
it's pretty much it's not the same as the 5D, but it
5D
just
is
costs
nice to work on.
It costs more. Like I've still yet to figure out what I think one of the churches around here has one. I think they said it cost like $90,000.
Yeah,
when they bought it, and the 5D only cost 50, I think, or less than that.
That's interesting too.
And I'm not sure why. The faders are still strewn out all over the place in no way which makes sense, but if you like swatting at stuff, I guess it's a good idea.
For those who, that was what it had to be at the time. Like if you had to convince the analog guys, you still had to have one fader per.
Right, but make them in order some kind of bit, a little like a 24. Hold on, wait, it jumped from 24 to 40 right there. What just happened?
That was, preemptive patching or something. Whatever. But anyway, we're still like to say this. Like you can watch trends and try to gauge like what's going to happen and maybe when it's time to sell out of some stuff. Like, all right, it's going to be time to sell these regular boxes and invest in line arrays. But until the explosion really happens, you never know. Like it could just be a fad. Like, I don't know. I've seen it happen a number of times with a number of technologies that,
or not even necessarily a fad, but wait till it gets refined a bit. Like, what are those new like?
Being an early adopter.
Yeah, like okay, great. The Vertex were not the first, I'm sure, but
no, the VDOS was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is still.
Yeah, it's still
those were amazing, but again, like you needed millions to get your hands on those. And Vertex put it within reach,
but. Now you've got stuff coming out like the Dave Rat stuff, which I'm sure is ungodly expensive right now, but in a couple years might come down to you only have to be a multimillionaire instead of a super multimillionaire to purchase one of those rigs.
And we're out of gas. All right, but that's good. We covered a lot of stuff.
I checked off all 4 things on our list.
We actually had a list. So you see how well we do when we have show prep? I'm not sure I can find a piece of gear to be that excited about, although I do have a pretty big heart on for Focusrite stuff. So maybe if their new interfaces actually drop next week, I'll have something to say to you. But
just go and rent it at Guitar Center. Apparently, Josh said their return policy is great. He used to go and take the company credit card and pick up cymbals for sessions 3 times a month.
Damn.
Nope, didn't like them. There you go. Restock. All right, charge me $15. You got it. Session's done.
I want to try those again. I wasn't. That's horrific.
Yep. It's not a bad idea. I just don't think they'll give me the credit card anymore after all the stuff I bought last week.
That you have to return in another week?
All the international shipping and... Oh, God.
International shipping? What? What did you order?
I didn't order anything. I'm trying to get projectors fixed.
Oh, those.
Because,
somebody got a deal on Canadian projectors years ago.
That works. Discontinued a year and a half before we bought them. Then they sat on a shelf 4 years before that. And as soon as we put the new bulbs in, the entire building blacked out for a second. And I know we have power issues, but sweet Jesus.
Your building seems like a perfect candidate to just do its own cogeneration. Like, you should just buy a big skid-mounted cat generator and cut from the grid.
Oh, I would love that.
You could actually, figure out what your electricity bills are, because we used to run the whole hospital on 50 gallons of diesel a day. Do the math on that.
It's cheaper than that.
Your electric bill is cheaper than that?
Yeah. It's definitely cheaper than $200 a day.
Well, the hospital's a pretty good side. I mean, that was running MRI machines.
So we just need to turn lights on. We don't need to provide iron lungs for anything. Maybe a couple people. We got some old timers on staff, but
right,
not that many.
All right. Well, anyway,
we're pretty much at an hour, right? 56,
near enough.
57.
Yeah, last week's ran long, as they usually do. So that's all right. We can wrap it up. I'm not going to do any of the usual plugging of Reddit because I'm fed up with Reddit today. I've had enough.
No more dickheads. There's a no more dickheads line in the show notes.
Yeah. Just
maybe someday we'll get rich enough to.
It actually wasn't even that bad. Like, apparently I made somebody mad enough with something I said that they were like willing to contact me outright and read me the riot act. But even that wasn't that bad. Like, I didn't feel like blood surging to my eyeballs or anything. I just it was a surprisingly civil conversation. So once again, my hat's off to Redditors.
Downvote.
Sorry. Oh. It's going to give me a downvote.
We just lost readership for the month.
Whatever.
Next month, guys. We'll get back.
But anyway, do check out Reddit. There's some cool audio forums on. There's one for almost any sort of musical or production interest that you might have. And that's really about it. Hit us up. You can find our blog at smart2noise.blogspot.com. Oh, we're going to be changing the RSS feed here shortly, so keep your eyes peeled for that.
We're an RSS feed?
No, we have one now.
Oh, we do?
It's actually 70 or 80 people hit it a day. It does pretty well for us. And that's the email subscriptions and all that. Okay. So if you are subscribed, we may be asking you to migrate. We may be able to do that automatically for you, or we may need you to re-sign up. So sorry for that, but what it's going to do is make it so that people that want to subscribe to the podcast and get it in the iTunes or whatever can do all of that. But I have to bribe the paperboy to explain how to do it for me because I'm old now and I don't have time to.
Well, I'll find a kid that's going to show me how to run programs that I don't know how to do. What I bought.
Evan's all busy now, so I can't get him. Just like, hey, I forgot how to computer. You do it.
I've got Evan's high school superior help me out on Sunday, so I'll bring him over.
Nice. All right.
He's going to show me how to do stuff, and I'm buying him Chinese. So
I was going to say, can we pay him in beer? Wait, what's he showing you?
Pro Presenter.
I could show you Pro Presenter. You buy me Chinese food, mother.
Didn't I buy? When was the last time I bought you Chinese food?
I don't know. Well, you bought me pizza tonight, so
okay, all right.
I won't cuss you out
yet until we hit stop.
Yeah.
Then let the profanities fly.
We've been doing pretty good. Hey, I was
going to say you only owe $8 tonight.
Doing pretty good on our promise to clean up our act for.
I feel like I'm doing
year.
better than you were tonight.
You may have been. Oh, I squeaked a couple out before we hit record, so I had the prompt. I was hoping to get them out of my system, but I think all I do was prime the pump.
We could just play that Blink-182 song with all of the swear words in less than 25 seconds, and
I love that song. So do my kids. But Anyway.
Not going to go.
Good point to sign off. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate it. You guys have been keeping the hits up real good on the blog, so we appreciate you when we bother to write, showing up to read it. That's just pretty cool. Also, if you have any ideas, by all means, get in touch. We've been hearing from Ika regularly. Actually, Ika explained to me that the time difference between here and Germany is only 6 hours. So he's like, yeah, if you guys record at 8, that's only 2 here, so I could still be up. I'm like, yeah, but we usually record at 11. So
unless we get up super early,
we'll sort it out. Actually, Saturday night, we might be able to swing it. We could theoretically be going as early as 9, but that's still 3 over there. So I still think it's going to take...
We'll actually need...
It's going to have to be morning here and afternoon there.
The mythological day off.
Man, I've just been booking dates. Got an electrical job to do this week. Got a lighting job to do next week. The heck? It's a mad, mad world. Wish I could get some sound work on the side. Son of a...
I was going to say, that's what I told Brandon. I was like, yeah, you should... You know what? I'll call John and let him know, because he actually knows what he's doing with the lights. I just know how to plug them in and
sort of
and joke through it.
Well, fortunately, it's a daylight show, so whatever I do won't screw anything up too bad. And I think they're paying... I think the check will have already been cut by the time I get there. So as long as I can make sure I get my hands on it, we'll be in good shape. But anyway, there's the theme music. So, oh, is it over? Nope. Here it comes. Here it comes. Here it comes. No, it's over. I didn't. We can't actually hear it where we are right now. I'm going to have to shuffle that. All right. Well, anyway, thanks for tuning in. Check us out on the blog. Look us up on Facebook. Find us on Twitter. By all means, bother us with your questions, your requests. Save the criticism, because we've had enough of dickheads this week.
No dickheads.
I feel like I should get... You remember those no-fat chicks tattoos that guys used to get in the 80s?
No dickheads.
I think I want to get a shirt.
Is that politically correct now with gay marriage?
I couldn't wear it to church.
You couldn't wear it to shirt?
Couldn't
figure out how to internet. Couldn't figure out how to internet. Couldn't wear it to shirt. Got it. We just hit the pause button.
Getting old as hell. All right. Thanks, kids, for tuning in.
Have a good night.
See ya.